this area here is actually the new section of the cemetery. And what that means is that it gets visitation. There's more living relatives. This was added in the early 1900s. Before that, it was just over here. And this cemetery is called Union Cemetery, and that's because it was the union of 4 fraternal orders. You're looking at the Oddfellows section right here. So these groups were very incestuous, so that, you know, if you were an Oddfellow, you might also be a Mason. And so there's a whole smorgasbord of symbology in each of them. But it is interesting, and I've geeked out on it quite a bit over the years. But Oddfellows here, Masons back over there on the entrance. On the left side as you come in, it's the Druids, which are trying desperately to still exist. It used to be international fraternal order with hundreds and hundreds of chapters all over the world. There's only California left, and they were founded here in Placerville, so they come on a pilgrimage. These lovely, decrepit old men come here and pay homage to their founder, a beautiful obelisk on the way in of Frederick Sieg. And the monument at the base of Cedar Ravine, that big tall thing, they put that, they built that for him probably 100 years ago as well. So he's much celebrated. All right, some common attributes of these women, and there'll be a quiz later, so you need to pay attention to this. They're civically engaged. I mean, I could just prattle on the number of organizations that not only are they members of, but they're in the leadership of these things, and it goes on and on and on. There was a lot of women's groups. You know, there was no internet and no TV for most of the time, so this is what there was to do, and they wanted to make a difference, and so they were in fraternals, clubs, improvement societies. And if they were alive today, everyone would be a Save the Graves volunteer, I can guarantee you. Church membership, they're freakishly musical, these women. I mean, like touring acts around the region musical. Like anytime anybody dies, they yank the kid out of school and say, you gotta go sing at a funeral today. They're artistic. We have these little coteries. Is that the way to say the word?
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's a little small group. Anyway, little small groups of women, you know, and they would sit in the parlor and read poetry and play instruments and paint ceramics.
And salons.
Coterie is a word, I looked it up, I just don't know how to say it. Anyway, but there's so much we don't know, and that's the problem with women's history. They didn't write it. It was all about the men. I mean, some of these damn tombstones, they don't even have the woman's first name on it. It's Mrs. T. Smith. Wow. You know, I mean, it's like they didn't exist. Guess when you could finally be a married teacher in a public school in El Dorado County? Within 10 years.
1930s, 40s,
64.
Oh, 1964.
You could not be married and teach in a public school until 1964.
Wow.
Hard to believe. Not a lot of career options for women in the 19th century, but teaching was one. So Nellie is one of many teachers that we'll hear about today. She was born on a farm outside of Placerville. At 16, she opened a private school in her parents' parlor. She became, later on, I guess her parents moved to Nevada. She was a private tutor there and qualified for a teaching certificate. They returned to California. She taught 8 years at Salmon Falls, Green Valley, Pilot Hill, and Uppertown. That Uppertown school is now the Lutheran Church up there. There's a cemetery up there too, a cool cemetery. It's the road right across from the McDonald's, across the freeway and up. Lutheran Church on the right, formerly Uppertown School, Uppertown Cemetery, very cool on left. She married an interesting guy, Leonard Dormady, which cost her teaching job, of course, in 1891. But she opened a private school and taught for 11 years while raising 3 children. So private schools, anything goes, right? And realistically, a lot of education, just like it's kind of doubling back, history repeats itself with charter schools, but a lot of education was. Anybody in a certain class, your kids didn't attend public school. I'll try to blast through this again. She was a trustee of the Placerville Grammar School, treasurer of the Presbyterian Church, which is a huge brick building that stood where the Bricks restaurant is today. We had two huge brick churches right there on either side of Cedar Ravine. The Methodist on one side and the Presbyterian on the other. Both got knocked down. They combined to form the Federated Church and eventually moved up the hill. Anyway, she was a sugar administrator during World War I. I don't know if you remember your history, but in World War I, sugar was very much a constrained, rationed item. So the sugar administrator. I never even thought about something like that. She was a member of the County Council of Defense, whatever that was, the State Federation of Women's Clubs, the Shakespeare Club, the Agriculture Club, the Christian Endeavor Society, and something founding member of the El Dorado County Historical Society, which formed in '36. You'll hear more about that. Her husband Leonard was an interesting guy. He had as many careers as his wife had causes and clubs. He worked for the railroads for a while, and then he had a butcher business at Mills Station down in Rancho Cordova. He was a grocer in Placerville and then turned to mining. All that was a warm-up for 18 years as a deputy sheriff, after which he operated a feed and fuel business before returning to mining with his sons. There was an infamous high grading scandal. Who doesn't know what high grading means? High grading is where, so in mining, we plucked it out of the streams at first year or so, and after that we had to dig big tunnels, and you had to hire people, so it became an industry. And you needed the guys that dug the gold out deep in the tunnels to put it in the bucket instead of their pocket. But invariably, because they were hardly paid anything and the work was horrific, power tools down there, they all deaf, lung disease, it was a nightmare. So a lot of it went in the pocket. It was a big problem for the miners, and so Dormady got the job as a special deputy, assistant deputy, to investigate all this stuff. And they did catch him, and it was a front page stuff. It was a big deal, front page of at least the Mountain Democrat, probably regionally. And right when he was wrapping up that investigation, he died of a stroke. All right, so you might notice that the grass needs to be cut. It's like this a lot. The county's in the worst budget crunch in anyone's memory.
Oh, wow.
It's horrible. They've completely defunded things like the Chamber of Commerce. So it's bad. They've defunded many things that bring in 5-10 times more than they cost in terms of revenue to the county. So one of the things that has been reduced is the service to our cemeteries. The good news is that, and they also don't know what to do with cemeteries like this, so they kick it into a different department every couple of years. So they kicked it into the facilities department, which should be good, but we'll see. Dorothy is right up there, the other side of that rose bush. Yeah, it's a headstone, and she's got about 4 or 5 of her kids there. Some of the others that married into other families are scattered around. We'll actually see some of them. When you're driving down Main Street towards the police station, the wall on the right gets steep. And on that wall, there's some stuff. And you can see it. And among it is a barrel. There's a carved barrel on a plaque. And that is the former Zeiss Brewery. Dorothea Hartmann was born in France, and married Jacob Zeiss in Placerville in 1859. Jacob is a Bavarian, trained in the art of making beer, and he builds this huge brewery down there on Main Street, very successful. A couple had 10 children and built their home onto the brewery building. He disappears. He goes back to Bavaria on business and never returns. She has 10 kids, a big old brewery, you know. And this is the pre-safety net era. This is when men were jerks and women were women, right? Right, the last one's born and he disappears. So this is the story of resilience. She continued the brewery business with her older sons and began renting rooms in the large home, operating a card room and a dining room, doing much of the cooking herself, so that these miners, it's a lot of single men in this era, 25 cents if you get a square meal. She became a much-loved local character. She spent the mornings cooking and did everything else in the afternoon, knitting sweaters and socks for the family. And she also, apparently these braided rugs, it was a whole craft thing that women did. I think they were used like, does anybody know about this? I think they used rag.
Fabric.
Yeah.
Fabric.
Yeah, anyway, she would sell these things. And so the whole family pitched in. They had a vegetable garden. They kept a cow for milk, chicken for eggs, turkeys and geese for Lord knows what. Dorothea continued to work in the family business until she was 74. At 74, she posted a notice in the Mountain Democrat saying, "On account of my health giving out, I'm compelled to close my boarding house. Thanks to the people of El Dorado County for your kind patronages these many years." What a gracious lady. She passed away in her home 4 years later and survived by 8 of her children, which means she buried 2 of them. The building stood until 64 before being burned down. Remnants, including the distinctive beer barrel, are still visible on the South Canyon wall on Upper Main Street. All that's left of the building is a carved limestone block with the word Zeiss that was over the door to the brewery at 660 Main Street. These roses, these are heritage roses. Some of these have been here more than 100 years. They are really, really tough. And I always used to wonder, what they were and try to talk plant people into identifying them for me. And then I got this app on my phone called Picture This, and you just take a picture of it and it tells you all about it. It's like, well, that takes a lot of the fun out of it. And then here's a link. You can buy one for $30. So they are heritage, but it's not like they're rare. People are keeping these things, and there's whole nurseries that just specialize in these old plants. They're climbing roses. They flower for months and months during the summer, and you probably couldn't kill it if you tried at this point. The problem is that they'll take over. People planted them behind headstones, and they just take over everything. And of course, they encourage all sorts of crud to grow on the headstone. Crud that I spend a lot of time out here with youth service groups cleaning off those headstones. So yeah. Johanna Pinther Kane, perhaps the most notable from a national perspective, because she was an early suffragette. She's buried right behind you with no headstone. There's nothing to see. So she led what is believed to be America's first suffragette march in Oakland, California. And when was that, Mike? In 1908. She was featured in a famous image which first appeared on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle. In 2008, 3 well-dressed women marched shoulder to shoulder with dignity and determination. Johanna's on the right. In the center, dressed in all white, is her stepdaughter-in-law, Jeanette Wall Pinther. Jeanette carries the banner of the California Equal Suffrage Association, hand-sewn and hand-embroidered by Johanna herself. She goes on to talk about how these women came together. Basically, they were all displaced by the earthquake and fire. And they all ended up in the same kind of small area in the East Bay, which is like where there was to go, I guess. And they ended up running into each other and reconnecting, and somehow the tragedy of the fire and the earthquake caused them to, how people just react in a tragedy. They group together and want to do something good, and so that's sort of where they were at. And suffrage was just one thing. They funded school. They drove. Funding schools was always touch and go in El Dorado County, definitely, but everywhere. So they drove for more and better government funding for schools, for fire departments. They created outdoor leagues, parks, outdoor stuff like that, and community services. The 19th Amendment passed 9 years after. 9 years, I said 10 or 11. Now she sort of gets lost. She gets divorced. And then she somehow ends up, the guy she was married to was quite affluent, a Pinther, this guy Pinther, and they had property up in Coloma. And so she ends up with some of the property in Coloma as part of the settlement. She's up here doing Lord knows what, I don't know, probably living here, I don't know really. And she meets this guy, this rancher named Kane from Coloma, and she marries Kane. He dies, and then she dies, and we have no idea if she ever had a marker. Did she have one, and did it get stolen? Right now, there's a big tree. When we leave, you can look at the big tree. Right where she's buried, we think, there's a tree that's grown. And this cemetery is of an age that the trees are a real problem. So maybe she was there, the tree grew up, knocked her headstone over, somebody took the headstone, who knows? Fun other characters. Joe Gasparini, he was a hermit, lived up by Pino Grande, got the nickname Butcher Knife Joe for fending off either a cougar or a bear, depending on which version of the story you read, with a pocket knife as a boy. So somehow he got named Butcher Knife, even though he used a pocket knife. I guess Pocket Knife Joe doesn't sound as impressive. So the Blair family is scattered all over this cemetery. And they're actually all over the town. There's roads named after them everywhere you go. This is Pauline Blair. We're going to talk about her right now. Pauline Larson was born to Norwegian pioneers in the Utah Territory. Pauline Larson traveled with her family by wagon to El Dorado County at just 5 years old. Wagon train attacked by Indians. They survived. In the 1860s, the Larson family settles in modern-day Camino. The Blair family had major logging and milling operations in the area, which was then known as Blair's District. Pauline's just a girl when her father, Nels, who we're going to actually just walk by his gravesite here in a minute, he's the patron of the Larson Ranch Empire in Camino, planted his first trees. He later became the first to plant pears east of Placerville. Pears were a major economic driver for Placerville for many, many years until the pear blight. And then and only then did wine become the economic driver, because one man who really, we should tell his story, convinced all these farmers to yank their pears out and plant wine grapes. And the rest is history. Subsequently, there was a bug-proof root that was developed, and they transplanted pears on top of the bug-proof root, and the pears came back several years later, but that's how we got a wine industry. Anyway, the Larsons have been a huge leader in the Seventh-day Adventist community and in local agriculture. Pauline here buried Matthew Blair Jr. There was 4 Scottish Blair brothers that came here, very formative, and they had lots of kids, huge family, lots of power marriages, so much so that we did a whole Save the Graves just on this one family. We had 11 characters, and there's one of them right there. So Pauline marries Matthew Jr. He's the second generation of them. His father famously perished tragically in the family mill nearby. He was cleaning it out, and a bunch of sawdust fell on him and suffocated him horribly. Pauline was quite spunky. She learned to drive at the age 70. And those who shared the road with her were no doubt, she was very exhilarated by driving, and my little ha-ha here is those who shared the road with her were no doubt also exhilarated. It is impossible to overstate the influence that Pauline's family, the Larsons and the Blairs, have played in El Dorado County's agricultural history over the last 170 years. The Larson family continues to own and operate the Larson's Apple Barn, a major Apple Hill visitor destination. If you haven't been, it's really cool. They got a bake shop, they got a cool museum, and Seventh-day Adventists, so they're not open on what, Mondays? What I forgot. Saturday. All right, so hang in the shade. First, I want to brag about my Veterans Memorial area here we created. This is the bench and a memorial rock and an interpretive sign about the GAR area. That's that Grand Army of the Republic. That's yet another fraternal order that was made up of Civil War veterans. That's right down there. Got a lot of rich history that is trying really hard to be forgotten, but my dead body. And so, yeah, we've got the Placerville hardware right down there, and here's some of the Zeisses, Frank's namesake. So this is probably the early son. He was born in 1881. That's about right. But we're here to talk about Stella Ralston Tracy. Tracy's interesting. So El County has a gold rush. It's actually relatively short. We don't even dig that deep. We only go about 2,000 feet down. And north, south, and east of us, they go 6,000 feet down. This isn't a pre-electricity. This is all being done with steam. So it requires major engineering and forests of wood to power all of these boilers, which was to make steam, to drop the people down, pull the ore up, push air down because you can't breathe down there, push ice down because it's 150 degrees down there, and pull, just all this transportation of stuff deep that had to be done with steam. And so it was hard. We didn't manage to pull it off here. Mining was illegal before we realized how much we'd left in the ground, which is a lot. And of course, we're like standing on it. It's the vein went right through Placerville, right down towards Chili Bar. So in the Comstock and Nevada, they also found silver. And they ended up building a network of tunnels, and it was like a 30-year boon. And in the early going, the only way to get there was through Placerville on a wagon. So they're hauling this huge iron parts. Everything came apart into wagon-sized pieces. These massive boilers and all this stuff. El Dorado County ends up a complete transportation economy because of the Comstock lode. They're completely funding 2 out of 3 men's jobs at that time. Between the inns, the taverns, everyone's a teamster. Of course, this is an era when there's a lot of investment, a lot of bogus investment, a lot of, if you read Mark Twain, Roughing It, he's got all this worthless stock. But one banker really made out. One guy made all the money, and he was named Ralston. And we're talking about Stella Ralston Tracy here. So he was like her uncle. She was born and raised in Placerville, one of many connections to the Comstock. She grew up in a large, comfortable home on Cedar Ravine. Early on, she demonstrated that she would become a talented musician and vocalist, composing her first music at the age of 7. Her mother was her musical mentor. The pair toured regionally, performing duets. After graduating from the Conklin Academy, and a lot of these women, Conklin Academy was a private school, roughly where the Ivy House was, which is where the Ivy House parking lot now is. That's where they all went to school. And then she went on to graduate from San Jose Normal School, the predecessor to San Jose State, and then back to El Dorado County, where she taught in one-room schoolhouses until she got married. One can imagine the suitors lining up during the 8 years she was single before tying the knot with lifelong friend Henry Tracy, whose family owned the Tracy Shoe Store on Main Street. So Heyday Cafe, which by the way has closed. There's a new restaurant in there now, but it says Tracy up above the awning. That's the Tracy Shoe Store. And his father, who founded that, is also a Save the Grace character. Dan Trainer portrayed him in 2022. And so Heyday closed in February. Like Nellie Dormady, Stella quit teaching when she got married They lived in a fine home on Union Street. Now, Union Street, you're thinking, sounds familiar, but where is that? That's because it's under the freeway. We had this really nice row of great Victorian luxurious homes on a street called Union Street that got pretty much taken out. There's a little tag of it left, but most of it got taken out by the freeway. And they tore them down. Price of progress. So, Stella, I missed where she became a widow. He dies at some point. Stella bought a small house on Coloma Road where she lived out the balance of her life. She's a charter member of the Shakespeare Club, also the Native Daughters, and a founding member of the Historical Society and later the Arts Council, which is now Arts and Culture El Dorado. She dies in '68 and leaves the Historical Society her house and its contents, which included photographs, documents, many fine antiques, which are on display in the museum. Stella also set up a scholarship fund for county high school graduates, and it's still in place today. I mean, it was a lot of money at the time. I forget if it's $200 or $300. Now it's not that much, but there's still a Stella Ralston Tracy scholarship given out every year. There she is. Sorry, Stella, I weed whipped you, but forgot to blow you afterwards. There she is. Really important person in the community. And oh, you know what? So this part of the cemetery is just full. Here's the Celios here. They are notable. What else is fun here? All right, you see that headstone right there? That thing sticking up this side of the sign? That's not stone. They're just plates bolted together out of zinc. And this was so disruptive to the monument industry that they managed to plant the seed that these things are D Class A, and big fancy cemeteries in the East ruled we won't have them in here. We don't serve those kind of people. Well, the darn things look exactly like stone, and they don't deteriorate. Nothing grows on them. They're unbelievable. And so they've gotten a whole following. They're called Zinkies. And there's a sign there about them. And so old cemeteries like this always have a handful. They were done right around the turn of the century. And they're very cool. And you can just order them out of a catalog. Just pick your parts, you know. I want this and this and this and this and this. You know, none of this by the letter. You know, getting a headstone, a sizable headstone like these big ones over here, that'd be 2 or 3 months income for a family. And then they spelled the names wrong half the time. It's unbelievably how many typos and mistakes there are. Bad death dates. And what are you going to do now? You know, your kid's carved, you know. So anyway, these things were a great alternative. Just the other side of that is Lulu Cook. Actually, she's in the next little section down, but she has no headstone. She's the first female deputy sheriff in El Dorado County. And Heather has lots of stories. Heather knew her as an old lady. She was a classic old maid character, very bitter. Chased the children off of her lawn with her broom. And so the same woman that I made you listen to earlier portrayed her last year, and we had her pose with her broom there. She said, "You kids better get off my lawn." But it was really important to have a female deputy because there was female criminals and female drunks and female dead people, and it was improper for a guy to handle them. And so she was a tough little bird, and she took care of business. Somehow or another, again, I guess it's the end of the family line. I'm not sure how absence of headstones happens, but no known headstone ever. Her father was the sheriff. He has one. Her sister has a nice one right there, but she has nothing. So Save the Graves did take up a collection at her portrayal last year and collected a couple $100, and then we'll probably chip in the other 15 or 20 $100 and get that done hopefully before this year. So anyway, we love her. All right, number 6. Maggie O'Keefe, right there, facing the other way. Born to Francesca Wax Akins and James Akins and Placerville Akins are another big family. There's a powerhouse named after them. Her father died shortly after Maggie's birth. Her mother married Michael O'Keefe when Maggie was 7. Michael operated a toll road which ended on Lower Main Street until 1886. That toll road ended at what used to be the Elder Options Building. If you ever had higher senior care 10 years ago, that's where you went. After the toll roads were made public, he got into the furniture business, which back then included coffins. And then those furniture makers eventually evolved into undertakers once the Civil War happened and we started pumping formaldehyde into bodies so that they could transport them back home. Somebody needed to do that, and so these furniture makers took these correspondence classes and became undertakers. In the funeral parlor, they had these furniture stores that weren't doing anything in the evenings, so you could hold a service in there because people didn't have parlors like they used to. All this stuff used to be done at home, of course. So anyway, O'Keefe ends up being an important undertaker for a period of time, and she takes over the business from him. Like these other women, she's a consummate pianist and also an authority on local history, a member of several fraternal and service organizations, and trained in music in San Francisco and taught piano in Placerville. She was attracted to the business side of the business, and when Michael died in '05, her father, she and her half-brother Francis took over the O'Keefe furniture and undertaking. When Francis died, that was her partner, in '26, Maggie managed the business alone for 17 years Francis with her brother. So she runs it with this guy named Henry Stites. Now in my mind, these guys work side by side, elbow to elbow for 17 years. He's single, she's single. Maybe I've been watching too many rom-coms, but come on. But like many other women of her era, she never marries. Maggie O'Keefe slipped into what would probably be diagnosed as a depression when her 26-year-old sister died suddenly in '09. She later said she lost interest in everything and that she was surrounded by death. I like signs, so I keep making these signs every year. Signs that explain cemetery lore, signs that, what I just read you will become a sign. This is on a symbol here, the anchor and the cross, which is on this adjacent headstone, which means stuff. I'm always trying to get people interested in the cemetery, because if we don't, you guys showed up on a hot day like this for this thing. Last year there was 30 people here for this event. But if we don't get the next generation interested in this stuff, I'm telling you, because of Save the Graves, this place looks the way it looks now. And when the county's not broke, they try to give us money. Last year they gave me a $10,000 TOT grant. I didn't even ask for it. This year, we were the first one on the chopping block. So I'm hoping that we can get some kids interested in this stuff, and I've come to see headstone cleaning. If you look behind you at all these beautiful white headstones, a year ago they weren't beautiful white. They were completely encrusted in lichen, and you couldn't even read them. So we've done some large youth service group projects out here. There's these clubs in El Dorado Hills, the National Charity League and the Boys Team Charity. And it's operated by these unbelievably organized type A women in El Dorado Hills. And it's 1-for-1, kid, parent. So, that little darling's not getting far out of their sight. And it's great for us. For every kid, we get an adult. And so we can cut them loose on something like headstone cleaning. It takes 15 minutes for me to show somebody how to do it. And then we've doubled the life of these beautiful old marble markers. Because marble is a soft rock. It's not going to live forever. There's two types of rock here. All the dark stuff is granite. The light stuff is all old marble, which varies tremendously in quality. The good stuff will last a long time, but a lot of it ain't the good stuff, and it won't last a long time. Already, some things are unreadable.
Completely gone.
Gloria Miserlian. So, is anybody here old enough and local enough to have ever been to the Bluebell Cafe? All right. Bluebell was the place to hang out for many, many years. A couple of generations of people called it home. It was a homey local cafe. And then later, after this family sold it to a couple of high school teachers, one of which was a neighbor of mine until recently. And he's like, "Oh, Mike, don't tell me. No, we were so bad. We were teachers." I mean, it was a major party zone. Live music every night, drugs, rock and roll, all sorts of stuff. But it died in 71. But she grew up as Gloria Butts. Now, well, first off, my joke I forgot to tell is Gloria was a real swinger. We're going to get to the punchline of that later in the talk. But she grew up as Gloria Butts. And how would you like to have that handle in high school? Or grade school, or ever? Anyway, she grew up on Main Street in the 1920s. Her father, Taylor Butts, opened a grocery store on the corner of Sacramento and Maine in '04. That's roughly where Mel's Diner is. And then he opened the Forum Cafe right down the street, and the Bookery is located on the site today. So the Forum Cafe was where she grew up. Back in 1999, Gloria told the Mountain Democrat that under the care of her grandparents, she was allowed to wander Main Street on her own from the age of 2. When questioned on it, she swore 2. A 2-year-old walking unaccompanied along a city street today is absolutely unthinkable, but the Placerville of Gloria's youth was a different place. Everyone knew me, she said. I was quite a fixture on the downtown scene. Most mornings she'd walk from her house on Coloma Street to the cafe. Now bear in mind there's no freeway then. Coloma Street went, the Church of Our Savior is on that street now. It went straight across towards Coloma. So it was pretty close. If you lived on Coloma, you were close to downtown. Every morning she'd walk from her house on Coloma Street to the cafe with several stops along the way, quote, to do my visiting, she said. First stop was right next door, the home of the Deckers, Dr. Reckers for a quick snack. Then it was on to Dr. Rance's house for snack number 2 before visiting the Titty Sisters, where she sat on that porch. She also loved visiting the town's 2 hardware stores in her wandering. One was located where Placerville News is today and owned by a Mr. Goodrich who exhibited live animals in the window, including fawns, cougar cubs, and snakes. You can imagine the PETA people fit over that. Gloria, young Gloria, who is just, completely audacious child, recalls trying to climb in to pet a fawn, which must have been a traumatic experience for both the fawn and Mr. Goodrich. The Keys Hardware, which became Placerville Hardware, was another favorite. She loved riding the moving ladder, which is still in use today, swinging on the moving ladder. The last stop was Tracy's Shoe Store, we already talked about, for another ladder ride, after which Tracy walked her across the street to the cafe. The Forum Cafe burned down in 1937. The loss devastated her grandfather, who died the very next year. Her father, Babe Butts, famous downtown character, who is basically the reason the freeway goes through downtown. He was the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and he blocked the bypass. They were going to bypass Placerville. Babe fought it and won. Nobody knows that, by the way. Anyway, her dad, Babe, built the Bluebell Cafe on the site. By then Gloria was a teenager, and she worked as a soda fountain girl. You can just imagine, this girl must have known everybody. She must have been the absolutely heart of the social universe in Placerville. The cafe featured a steak sandwich and fries and a salad for $2.75. A scoop of ice cream cost $0.25. The Bluebell also served the famous Hangtown Fry, made oysters, eggs, and bacon for $2. She graduated high school in '41 and married Bill Schroth, who was drafted a week after the marriage. He became one of the first casualties in World War II in the Aleutian Islands campaign a year later. In '52, 11 years later, she marries a Navy man named Bob Mizarian. And when he retired in 62, they took over the Bluebell from her parents and ran it until 66, finally closed in 71. So the wild period where my neighbor had it, well, it must have been 66 to 71. Miss Arian died in 94. Gloria died in 04. And her daughter, Karen Kling, recalls she knew everyone and loved everyone. If she went to Rayleigh's, she was gone for hours. Molly Carpenter, she's a pioneering female journalist who eventually became the editor and publisher of the Mountain Democrat. Daughter of powerful local politician Gideon Judd, like to be called G.J. Carpenter, a Georgetown miner who became Speaker of the Assembly, Clerk of the Supreme Court, and a railroad commissioner in an era when Placerville belatedly gained railroad service. It's a very long story, but Placerville was majorly stunted by not getting the Transcontinental Railroad through here. And then it took another 30 years, and there was some major behind the scenes moving and shaking and money changing hands, and GJ was in the middle of that. She's born in Georgetown but grew up in Placerville because in addition to his political pursuits, her father owned the Mountain Democrat. Like several of her peers in Placerville's small town social scene, Molly is very musical. At 9, she plays in the Methodist Church. She starts singing in church at 12 and never stopped. Her entire life she sang at the Methodist Church. Public school educated in Placerville till high school, when girls in her socioeconomic class attended the private Conklin Academy, which predated the Ivy House. In 85, she travels east to attend the prestigious Wellesley College and the even more prestigious Boston Conservatory of Music. These are some of the first schools of their kind and some of the best, both top 5. Yet she doesn't pursue music as a profession. She misses Placerville and comes back home to be with us. So these would have been perspective markers. Obviously that big behemoth is something. But the lettering, it's outie, not innie. So carving innies is easier than carving outies, where you have to remove everything but the letter. See how the letters stand out. Okay. So whenever you see outies, you know that it's a prominent person. So this is kind of the heart of the early Mason section, and it's been pretty heavily vandalized and stolen. So this whole area is full of graves. Like this one here, if you were to start scrubbing on this, you know, it's already delaminating, it's falling apart. This is an example of a low quality granite. This guy Kirk was a huge, big deal lawyer, and he got sold a cheap headstone. Oh. All right. So this plot right here is the Blair plot for reasons I absolutely cannot figure out. There's like 2 headstones in it, and they also got a cheap, big, huge thing, and then failed to get it engraved deep enough to even see it. In this light, you can sort of see the letters, but many times of the day, it's completely illegible. I have no idea what happened, why they would do that. They were all into family and everything else. So we got Amanda Schooley Blair. Let me see, where is she? She's number 9.
I was thinking it'd be a good time to take a drink.
So she's in there on an unmarked grave. She marries one of the original 4 Blair brothers. She's raised in upstate New York as one of 8 children. Interesting, she's very connected to a guy named William Stewart, the massively influential politician who becomes the Secretary of State during the Civil War. He's also, in the Lincoln assassination, he's gravely wounded during the Lincoln assassination, because if you remember that, the group targeted several officials, including Lincoln, and so Stewart also got taken out. But anyway, Amanda was a frequent inhabitant of the Seward household as a companion to their young daughter Fanny. And so in 1850, Amanda's father Ezra left New York in pursuit of gold. It's 1850 after all, leaving his family behind. He gets within 10 miles of Coloma and dies.
Oh, no.
She and her mom find their way here many years later. And she meets James Blair of the Blair lumber fame, and the flame was lit. The newlyweds lived at Sportsman's Hall in Camino, you know where that is? Until 1865, when they built a home on Cedar Ravine Road across the street from James's brother and business partner, John. All the Blairs congregated right at the base of Cedar Ravine. Blair plot kind of extended over to here. Here's Robert, Blair brother number 3, and Abigail right there. This branch then married into the Kumbelics, of the Kumbelic store downtown fame. So it becomes a real bowl of spaghetti when you start doing genealogy on these old families, especially the ones with lots and lots of kids. The Blairs had a lot of boys, and so the Blair name got retained. And then when they would have a girl, and she would change her name, of course, a lot of times they would name the kids first name Blair. So I told you that the mausoleum down there is like a who's who from the 80s. This is the who's who of the 70s. Here, these were built first. Truman Wilcox and his wife Mary. Mary's sister Jane married John Blair, linking the two prominent Scottish families. Molly's father, Truman, was not only bound to the Blairs by marriage, but through multiple business ventures. I mean, these Blairs, the power marriages that they pulled off, you know, not just here, but you know, they marry into the Auburn olive oil king world and the Sacramento tallow and hide, all through marriage. And they don't seem to be arranged or anything. The women really like these guys. So anyway, Truman is a sad case. Upper Town, which is basically Broadway, the other side of the police department, the other side of the Thai restaurant, that was a different place, like a different town. You could take a bus to get from Placerville to Upper Town, okay? So it had its own social everything. They've got their own cemetery, they had their own schools. So Truman had a grocery store in Upper Town. He also had a warehouse on Upper Main Street, just east of the police station. The warehouse stood forever, and it was a stage stop, an armory during the Civil War. In the later years, the Blair brothers had it, and they used it as a custom milling room. But an office building and restaurant were proposed for the site in the 1980s, and a concerned public, even back then, opposed the destruction of this historic building to no avail. It was torn down and the project was built. And this, as you go down Main Street and you have to turn left at the police station and then right to get on Broadway, that thing right in front of you when you go to turn left is this project that got built. They tore down Truman's warehouse. We're very upset about this. To mitigate the loss of the historic building, a replica of a water wheel was included at the site. Now, I happen to have been walking around there a couple months ago. This dilapidated, complete death trap watermill fake thing is sitting there just waiting for a match, and that's the mitigation. So, but it was 1980, you know. Truman dies really mysteriously in 1877, a dark and stormy night. He left work for home on foot, and he was crossing a footbridge over Hangtown Creek. He steps off the edge of the bridge and face plants head first down the stream bank and breaks his neck in Hangtown Creek. And they don't find him for a while, you know, because he's down there. So this is all very mysterious. You know, there's all sorts of conspiracy theories at the time. But Molly graduates private schools, gets sent to Southern California, where she met her husband, Frank Stoddard, the nephew of Huntington, of the Big Four, the Central Pacific, the Railroad Four. And her husband works for Huntington, and his family and career connections give Molly entree into Los Angeles high society, and specifically its philanthropic groups. While raising their two children there, Molly throws herself into women's and children's aid societies and becomes instrumental in compelling the state legislature to pass a bill that required fathers to pay child support whether the child was born in or out of wedlock, which is a big deal at the time. After the kids were out of the house, she divorces Stoddard and marries an old friend, former Los Angeles State Senator Henry Hurd. That's her last name. A couple become frequent visitors to Placerville, where they own the Pioneer Lodge, which was a resort up above Pollock. Molly remains close to the extended Blair family throughout her life. Early supporter of the Placerville Shakespeare Club. When she dies in 1929, she bequeathed a generous donation to build the historic Shakespeare Club building. On her birthday, Shakespeare Club members visit Molly's grave and leave flowers upon her memorial. I mentioned Heather earlier, and this is Heather's dogwood tree. She and her sister hauled buckets of water out here to keep this sucker alive. That's her great-great-grandfather over there, Maury. He had a foundry where the Shell station is today, and basically made the mining and railroad industry possible in El Dorado County. One of many little-known, unsung, instrumental industrialists. So you can see that, you know, you're not in some cemetery where the poor people ended up. These were the movers and shakers of the day. And I don't try to portray it any other way. This cemetery was built by the fraternals because the other cemeteries were already, in 1871, such a disgrace they didn't want to put their families there. They bought this land and built this cemetery and moved their families from those places into this cemetery. So it'd be nice if we kept it a little decent. So anyway, here's Lulu Weatherwax. She's an interesting one, really. She's kind of tied with Gloria for who I'd like to have coffee with. Lulu's the only child of Charles and Sarah Weatherwax, and they did not know what to do with her. She's a famous eccentric. Her father grows up in El Dorado. His parents are merchants. He serves in the California Cavalry during the Civil War, settles in Placerville, owns a hardware store on Main Street, and later serves as the city clerk in the years before his death. This great actress, Lisa Destro, portrayed her in 2021 for us, and it was one of the most nuanced performances ever, I think. Destro's Lulu recalls her father as distant, but, quote, a kind father who just never knew what to make of me. But not judgmental, you know, he just gives her space. Her mother, Sarah, steadfastly supported Lulu and all of her eccentricities, turning over multiple rooms in one of Placerville's finest old homes to her daughter. It's a huge house, still standing at the corner of Bedford and Coleman. Artists, poets, and musicians of all types found Lulu's door. Lulu was particularly close to Stella Tracy, Maggie Carpenter, and Bine Ingham, forming a coterie, there it is, of women more concerned with art and literature than matters of the heart or pocketbook. And yes, I did make that line up. Stella Ralston Tracy, remember, she had money, and so she kept buying Lulu's work, her artwork. Maggie and Bine roomed with her. Don't say whether they're separate rooms or not, but roomed with her for many, many years. So they lived there. She claimed she was never interested in marriage, children, or men, just art. She painted on canvas, but most loved painting on ceramics. She had one of the first kilns in Placerville. Several examples of her oil painting and painted china are on display at the County Historical Museum, if you could ever get in there. She won a ribbon at the 1915 Pan Pacific Exposition in San Francisco, one of many in her life. And in her 20s and 30s, you know, because we got like no information. These are like notable people that we have nothing on. But you can find ads in the Mountain Democrat. She's selling hand-painted ceramics, which was a whole thing at the time. It was like paint by numbers, or like Bob Ross or something. Women, especially women of a certain class, this is something you did with your leisure time. Yeah, the local historian Mary Corey concludes, quote, with only the bare outlines of Lulu's life known to us now, her art is what we have to remember her by, which is really a beautiful statement. She lived in her parents' home on Bedford until 1945, when at 72, Lulu moved to San Francisco to, quote, live a bohemian lifestyle. Awesome! She died apparently very happy in 1950 at the age of 77 in San Francisco. Her bohemian friends brought her back to Placerville and laid her to rest. Oh man, a bohemian. Oh, this is too good. And this has been like, think about it, this is like before Allen Ginsberg. This is the real early North Beach bohemians in San Francisco. I would have loved to have known her in that era.
Yeah, and I think it was the, and they had hard knives.
Watch the throw hole for China here. So this is Marion Blair Harris. She's born to Matthew Blair II, so we're now into the third generation. And Pauline Larson Blair, who we met on step 4. Marion is the eldest of 8, raised between the family home on Clay Street and the historic Blair Mill site and ranch in Pollock Pines. Marion's grandfather was Nels Larson. Marion marries this local orchardist, John Harris, and together they raised 3 kids. And she's real passionate about preserving her family legacy. Her sons partnered with their cousins in the 1940s to resurrect the Blair Lumber Enterprise. This time it was a retail store that many people here, that old timers remember, Blair Brothers Lumber Company. So it was right on the corner again of Cedar Ravine and Main Street. Everything Blair was oriented right around there, and they employed all kinds of guys. I mean, among the old timers here, if your dad didn't work there, your grandfather did, type of thing. Marion and John planted pears and apples on the old Blair family ranch and operated a successful orchard. When her parents died and the farm was slated to leave the family, Marion pooled resources with her son Blair Harris. There's another first name Blair, right? Blair Harris, and bought out her siblings to keep the farm in the family. Today the farm continues to be operated by Marion's grandchildren. It's known as the Harris Family Farm. So they make killer apple pies, and I've only been there when they were selling Christmas trees, but it's right on the main road through Coloma. You can't miss it. So that's Blair's and Harrison's.
The shade really makes a difference, huh?
All right, we're going to meet Laura Kybers right now. So I told you they were good at power marriages. The Kybers family, they were Kybers. They were involved with Sutter early on. They were here before the discovery of gold, and the family actually contends that their great-grandfather Sam is the one that found the Coloma site for Sutter. Unfortunately, Sutter didn't write that in his diary that he wrote in every day. So if it's true, he never made note of it, but they claim it's true, and maybe it is. He was running Sutter's fort for Sutter at the time. He was he and his wife they knew how to run hostelry, hotel type places, and Sutter's fort was basically that. Laura grew up, Sam gets flooded out down in Sacramento a couple times, gets sick of it, and moves up here. He moves to Clarksville. Clarksville was the old town where El Dorado Hills is now. It's a ghost town, still standing. Sam's house is still standing behind the movie theater on private property. So anyway, Laura's born in Clarksville in that house. Sam Kybers in 77. By this time, the families, they're working class dairy farmers, and the family is very proud of their rich heritage in California. Sam and Rebecca worked for John Sutter at his fort. I just told you about that. He was Marshall's right hand. Sam and Marshall were Sutter's right hands. Marshall always said that the sawmill should have been built up on the Feather River on Marshall's property, and Sutter decided to build it in Coloma, where supposedly Kybers suggested he build it. But Coloma also made a lot of sense because the promise was to be able to float lumber down the river to Sacramento. But what they didn't think about was Salmon Falls. Salmon Falls, the logs never got past Salmon Falls. So that didn't work. Anyway, Laura was an adventurous young woman who enjoyed biking around the county at a time when it wasn't considered ladylike to do so. In '96, she acquires her teaching certificate, yet another teacher. And for over a decade, she works as a teacher in small schoolhouses throughout El Dorado County. She later marries Matthew Blair III. Laura and Matthew lived on Main Street between Turner and Sheraton. Oh yeah. So there's been a series of failed restaurants right there. You probably never went to any of them. I always try them because the inside of the place is incredibly historic. It's an old gunpowder storage place, and so the walls are like 8 feet thick, and there's all this carving on the walls, and if we can only get a decent restaurant in there that survived. It's right next to the self-service car wash on Broadway. They had 4 children, one of whom, Matthew Gordon Blair, would go on to become mayor of Placerville, and also joined his Harris cousins to establish the Blair Brothers Lumber Company. I kind of got my start in history in Clarksville as a reporter in El Dorado Hills. I kind of got that place opened up at least once a year for Clarksville Day. And we studied, and at the time she was born in that tiny little house, it's maybe 1,000 square feet, if that, outdoor plumbing. They had 2 adopted kids in there and 5 kids of their own. And I mean, they must have been sleeping on top of each other. It's just inconceivable of where all these people, and the house is still standing. I mean, it's literally a strong wind could take it down at any time. But you're able to look through the window. It's totally unsafe to go inside. But you're able to look through where were all these people sleeping? It's wild. Full of bankers and lawyers and rich people. So the Ingham here was a big lawyer, big-time lawyer. His daughter Bine, she's born in 1856, comes to Coloma as a girl with her parents George and Sarah. Like her very close friend Maggie Carpenter, Bine came from pioneering stock and went on to become successful lawyers and local politicians, her stock, her parents. George and Sarah Ingham got here in the 1850s and eventually settled in Coloma. Sarah was known for a cool period craft called crazy quilts. You guys ever heard of those?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'd never heard of them.
Love them.
Anyway, some of her crazy quilts are on display at the County History Museum, and she chose fabric that, like, this one's from the World's Fair, and they tell a story. Ingham was a county judge and later a California Supreme Court justice. As a girl, she rode a horse from her home in Coloma to Placerville daily to attend the prestigious Placerville Academy. She learned telegraphy at the Coloma Telegraph Office when she was a teenager. And at 24, she went to work for the Mountain Democrat on Main Street in Placerville. Back then, it was right where the hardware store is now, in the right half of it. And she stayed there 41 years, holding every significant position in the business, from typesetter to publisher. For many years, Bine lodged with Mrs. Weatherwax and Lulu, her daughter, at their home of Bedford and Conrad. And that's all we know about her. She's right there. This is her mom. Her mom got a really cool headstone. You don't see this in this cemetery a lot. That's more of a Catholic thing. You see George. He's got a bunch of symbols on his headstone. Native Sons of the Golden West and a Mason. Where is she? Where are they? Oh, there it is. I was right there. Cornelison. This lady was a real character too. She was a loud one. She famously, she's the subject of a famous photograph. She was the only daughter of William Kirk and Annie Summers Graft. She was 10 years old when the family arrived in El Dorado County in 1899. Her father owned a newspaper called the Placerville Nugget, which later merged with the El Dorado Republican. As we learned from Johanna Pinther Kane, the 19th Amendment, which gave women the unilateral right to vote, wasn't ratified until 1920, but several western states full of men who were desperate for women passed suffrage laws allowing women to vote in state and local elections much sooner. Oh man, earlier I told you Wyoming. It was Montana that did it first in 1869. 42 years later, California caught up with Montana and did the same thing. Gertrude became the first woman in Placerville to register to vote on January 3rd, 1912. Her father, William, was a serial entrepreneur who, in addition to his newspaper, also had the first Ford dealership in Placerville. And her job was to teach new automobile owners how to drive. The limitations of the newfangled autos were a large concern to the general public and an obstacle to the success for William and Gertrude, so they came up with a promotional gimmick to deflate public concern. But there's like serious discussion about horses are way better for getting around. I mean, they can just walk over stuff and around stuff. I mean, they got permission to drive up the new El Dorado County Courthouse steps, demonstrating the car, driven by a woman no less, could easily go anywhere that a horse could go.
There you go.
In 1914, Gertrude expanded the family empire by purchasing the Dodge dealership in Placerville. When World War I ended in 1918, she went to France with the Women's Division of the YMCA to serve as a canteen worker for the troops still stationed in Europe, while the treaty ending the war was being negotiated. During this time, she wrote articles about her experiences that were published in the El Dorado Republican. She returned from France in October 1919 and went straight to the Dodge factory in Detroit to pick up a new Dodge touring car. She and a fellow canteen worker drove across the continent on the new Lincoln Highway. And that was a thing at the time. You know, Lincoln Highway is the first coast-to-coast road, and so celebrities, Hollywood starlet was the first woman to do it. So she was in the second wave of people to drive coast-to-coast on the new road. In many of the small towns they traversed, young men who knew or knew of them from France turned out to celebrate their contributions. The women enjoyed a lot of celebrity. That's nice. In 1921, Gertrude married California Highway Patrolman Richard Cornelison. The couple had a daughter, Gloria. Anybody that knows Kirk Smith, who's a local commercial landowner and eccentric, that is her grandson. She arrived in El Dorado County in 1931 and taught, then principal, in Placerville schools for 35 years, including 13 years as principal of Sierra School. When they built a new elementary school in Placerville in 1966, it was named after her, and that's Schnell School on Schnell School Road. She was active in lots of organizations, the Seroptimists, the Order of the Eastern Star, that's the female version of the Masons, the Daughters of the Nile, Delta Kappa Gamma, and the Federated Church. So there's a sorority of women of a certain age, Placerville women, that is still active. I don't fully understand how. I thought sororities were always affiliated with an educational institute, but it's not. They're just Placerville women. In '58, Coloma celebrated the centennial of the discovery of gold. It was a really, really big deal. Hundreds of thousands of people came to Coloma for that. She took her grammar school class down there to live as pioneers for a week. Quote, school routine wasn't disrupted. It was thrown out the window. But the youngsters who for a week lived in the days of long ago learned what no books could teach them. They responded to the living feel of history. They are out of their pantalettes and coonskin caps today and back to bobby socks and zipper jackets, but they got something they can take with them, something they won't forget. Like many of the women we've met today, Louisiana Schnell never married. And I forget, this symbol here is unusual. I think that might be the, what did I say?
I want to get in the shade.
Sure.
I don't want you to burn up.
All right. Thanks, guys.